Wow, it's been a really long time since I talked about Digital Foundry.
It's been a while since I talked about you. Welcome back, sir. Happy to have you on the program. Also, I know my voice sounds a little different. It's because I'm sick.
Possibly because there hasn't been a whole lot of Switch ports to complain about. I don't think I've talked shit about them since the Wii U days, honestly. I can't remember when I last talked about this.
Well, yeah, if it regards to Nintendo ports, it doesn't surprise me that you're not going to talk shit about someone who's pointing out the problems with them. Nintendo ports are generally kind of hit or miss. I guess they never
talked about their active attempts at sabotaging Nintendo third-party ports. It's just...
So, talking about the objective traits and the running of a third-party Nintendo port, that is an active sabotage. As opposed to ignoring those things and trying to make sure people don't hear about them, what would you call that? I mean, I would call that kind of propaganda-ish. It's a little dramatic of a term because we're talking about video games here, but which one of those do you think really has the most negative impact? Discussing the objective flaws of a product? And not even really flaws, really just talking about, oh, hey, here's how the game runs, here's its resolution, this is what you should expect going into it. How is that an active sabotage? And how is that any worse than what you're doing, where you just want people to buy the game regardless, without knowing the actual details of what they're getting into?
It's straight up ridiculous.
Straight up ridiculous. Boy.
To see people try and weaponize this specific channel against Nintendo all the time.
Oh wait, they're doing it all the time. I thought this was the first time that you've heard about it in a while. That didn't take long.
I would almost say that this is probably one of the big anti-Nintendo port channels.
Digital Foundry is not an anti-Nintendo port channel. They're just a stat channel and a tech channel. You want to know how a game is going to run? You go to Digital Foundry. Maybe Nintendo should do some better quality assurance of their ports if this upsets you so much?
If not the biggest. The one that sort of exists to justify PC gaming, because really when you get down to it, like, the only reason that people can say that PC gaming is superior is because of this channel.
Yes, PC gaming is only superior because of Digital Foundry. You figured us out. You figured us out. If Digital Foundry was deleted off YouTube, nobody would play on PC anymore. That's why there's over 1 billion PC gamers globally, and Digital Foundry has... You know what? I don't think you're right about this.
I don't know. Like, pretending that all PC games always run at, like, 60 frames per second.
Well, yeah, no, they don't run at 60 frames per second all the time. It's usually a lot higher than that.
Like, all the time in, like, those inferior console ports. I mean, it's not just... Okay. So, generally what happens is that Digital Foundry tries to pretend that PC gaming is the ideal.
No, they usually don't do that. They'll compare a console version to a PC version, so you can get a general idea of how well the game runs in relative to a superior platform. I know it's going to make you upset that I say PC is a technically superior platform, but I mean, until somebody proves me wrong, I'm going to keep saying it. In terms of technical specs and technical capabilities, the PC is the superior gaming platform. It makes sense to compare console ports to a PC version. But you're also glossing over the fact that Digital Foundry is not a PC-centric channel. They talk about PC specs, yes, but they do analysis videos on pretty much every major console game that comes out too. Because, believe it or not, people care about how games run on consoles. Again, if this upsets you, maybe Nintendo should be doing more QA?
Consoles, Xbox and PlayStation are not quite up to par with PC.
Wait a minute. So you just said Digital Foundry is the only reason people prefer PC, but then like 20 seconds later you said the consoles aren't up to par with the PC. Why are we here?
And then, like, Nintendo is straight up terrible. Like, all the time. They always try and push this narrative.
Well, they're not pushing a narrative that the Switch ports are terrible. We're pushing... It's not even a narrative, really, that has to be pushed. It's just like, hey, look at these numbers. They're kind of low. And that's not even me saying that the Switch ports are bad, because there are excellent Switch ports out there, absolutely. But that just kind of makes it worse, doesn't it? The fact that there are really good Switch ports out there, and then new games come out not up to par with those good Switch ports. That's why we like people like Digital Foundry. If a game runs like crap, I'm not going to buy it. If a game runs decent on one platform but better on another platform, I'm going to buy it on the better platform because I want the better experience. And there's not a lot of channels that really do that kind of in-depth analysis. That's why people like Digital Foundry. Nobody's saying the Switch ports are objectively bad. They're just saying that it doesn't run as well as a more powerful platform, which really shouldn't even be a controversial statement.
And it never turns out to actually be true, coming from someone who actually only plays on Nintendo games.
So you only play Nintendo, but you're now going to tell us why Digital Foundry is wrong analyzing and comparing it to other platforms. I don't speak a lick of German, but I will happily be your tour guide to Berlin.
I don't have a problem playing Nintendo versions of these games.
Yeah, nobody's saying that you have to have a problem with them. Nobody's saying that you can't enjoy a game just because it doesn't run as well on the platform that you're playing it on. Nobody's saying that. They're just saying it runs differently, in a lot of ways worse. This isn't even like an emotional or opinionated thing. This is just the thing that's here.
As I've mentioned several times on this channel, I prefer it to Xbox, PC, and especially PlayStation 4, which is a complete piece of shit.
Why, though? Why?
Every time I come out and every time I see them bitch or whine or moan about something, these pretendos, these anti-Nintendo people, these Twitter warriors.
I'm actually really excited. I haven't watched this yet. I'm so excited to see where this goes. The Nintendo boys are eating each other. I'm so excited.
Really lashing out against Switch. Rich from Review Tech USA. Oh, how is Switch possibly going to handle next-gen games?
I mean, it's a good question. The Switch doesn't even really handle current-gen games all that well. And again, it's all relative. You can be fine with the Switch performance right now, but everyone can see it's worse than other consoles. So when the next gen comes around, what is Nintendo going to do to stay on top of things? Nintendo is a very casual platform. Most people who play on Nintendo platforms don't care too much about the technical specs and the technical running of the game. But if games start running like shit, people are going to leave. I didn't know anything about technical specs or the way games run or anything like that up until, I didn't care up until like 2016-ish, 2015, 2016, after the Xbox One and the PS4 came out. But even going from the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One, I started realizing, man, why do these games feel kind of sluggish now? How come Call of Duty on the 360, it felt really smooth, but Call of Duty on the Xbox One, the load times are super long, and it's really jittery sometimes? What's the deal with that? How come Gears of War on the 360 felt kind of sluggish, but, manageable, but it still feels sluggish on this more powerful console? What's the deal with that? And then I started learning, and then I moved over to PC, and I'm like, damn, that's why. That's why. It's because the hardware sucks. My point is that even the most casual players will catch on to these things. Because yes, casual players are Nintendo's core audience, and casual players tend not to care too much about the technical running of the game. But there does come a point where it's unworkable and people will leave. It is a perfectly legitimate question to ask. What is Nintendo going to do when the next gen rolls around and their system can't handle it anymore?
I don't know. Will developers actually make a decent Switch port? And that's the thing that gets me. That's the thing that gets me all the time. The narrative that's been going on these past few years. People are complaining about the hardware, but not the games themselves.
No, I think people are complaining about the games themselves and the hardware. Both. You can complain about two things. It's perfectly possible to dislike two things. I dislike a lot of things, in case you haven't noticed.
Not the developers themselves. This wouldn't have happened if Nintendo made the Switch more like a PC.
I mean, you don't have to make this Switch more like a PC. You could just made it a little better.
Instead of asking yourself, why are these companies who are releasing a game on a video game console releasing a lackluster port, assuming that the port is bad? Why are these companies not making a good video game, right?
And that's a perfectly decent question to ask. If you're releasing a game in 2020 or 2019, yeah, why are you not doing good QA? Like, why did optimization just get thrown out the window this last generation? Is it because of the hardware? Is it because standards are lower? Is it because brand recognition is more important? I mean, it's not the hardware. I can promise you it's not the hardware. Indie games tend to run really, really well on the Switch and on the PS4 and on the Xbox. If indie developers can get these things working really well, why can't bigger developers with more money and more marketing? Well, that's the problem. They're more concerned with marketing and money. That's just my opinion. My point is that it's really, really common for subpar ports to come out on consoles now. The last few years especially. Why are you not taking issue with this?
They instead rant and rave about the Nintendo console itself. Like, oh, if this was more powerful, if it had more specs, if it had more memory, this wouldn't be a problem. Like,
well, let me throw an olive branch to you. Let me throw you an olive branch. I think the Switch is very impressive, technically. For what it was trying to do, I think the Switch was really impressive. It was a really good piece of tech. It's not perfect. I do think Nintendo should be looking into like a Pro variant, an enhanced, something that can run games a little better. But for what it was trying to do, the Switch is a very impressive piece of tech. It's not perfect, but it's impressive. The problem comes when you try to take this piece of tech and do things with it that it wasn't really designed to do, like high-quality ports, high-quality third-party games. The Switch wasn't really designed for that, but that's what it's being marketed as, and that's what it's trying to sell itself as now. That's the problem, because it's putting all these problems on display. If you want third-party games, third-party AAA games, why would you go to the Switch? There is zero appeal for the Switch right now in that regard. That's the problem. Because it runs those games like crap. And that's not saying every game on the Switch runs like crap. It's saying a lot of games on the Switch run like crap in comparison to the other consoles. If I had an Xbox One and a Nintendo Switch, and I wanted to buy a third-party game that was on both of them, there is zero reason I would buy it on the Switch. I think both of those consoles are technically underpowered compared to the competition, but I would never buy it on the Switch because it's going to run even worse.
They make it Nintendo's problem, even though they have nothing to do with the release of the game. You know what I mean? Like,
this is another thing that I'll throw an olive branch to you for. Nintendo does not have a hand in developing these third-party games, yes. But they did have a hand in creating the console the way it is. And ultimately, the buck stops there. And I'm trying to give you both sides here. I know you're not actually going to watch this video, but I'm trying to give everyone watching this video both sides here. On one side of the coin, you have developers who can make the Nintendo hardware work in their favor and do really good ports. The Witcher 3 port, as ugly as I think it is, it's really damn impressive. From a technical standpoint, given the hardware that they were working on, it's really impressive. And like I said, there's a ton of indie games that can get things moving really smooth on the Switch. It's really, really good. And then Breath of the Wild runs amazingly on the Switch. Odyssey runs really well on the Switch. But then on the other side of that, you have the developers who are making really crappy, half-assed Switch ports, and you have to wonder why. So who do you want to blame? Do you want to blame the developers for not putting the effort in? Or do you want to blame Nintendo for making hardware that's hard to work with? Someone has to shoulder the blame here, and I think it does go on a case-by-case basis. I just think it's really funny that you're kind of alluding to this, that, oh, it's not Nintendo's fault, it's the developer's fault. Okay, that's really interesting, because at the beginning of this video, you made it sound like Switch ports had no problems.
why are you not going after the actual developer? I
mean, people do that. But they do. If a developer puts out a really crappy port, I'm going to go after the developer. But if there's limitations of the hardware that the game is being released on, I'm going to go after the maker of the hardware. Really not that complicated. People have the mental capacity to separate the two things.
I don't understand why so many people, so many people are just consistently making excuses for these companies.
Like you, for Nintendo, for like 5 years now.
If you release a game on Nintendo hardware, it should be on par with other versions of the game.
But Nintendo's hardware isn't on par with the competition's hardware.
There's no justifying this.
No justifying this. Interesting. And
I do think when next gen comes and it's not as big as a leap as past generations, we're past the point, I think, where more power equals better looking games.
This generation was widely running at 1080p 30 FPS. I really don't think this is the hill you want to die on. The 8th gen of consoles was extremely underpowered. The 9th gen, I agree with you slightly that it's not going to be as big of a leap as people think it's going to be. But to say it's not going to be a leap from industry standard of 1080p 30, like, come on. It's going to be at least a leap from that, I hope. I am praying it's better than that.
We are reaching the point, I think, where we can safely say that Nintendo games do look better than the competition. Like ARMS, Splatoon 2, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey are completely gorgeous. It's only a matter of time until we see an end to this sort of a narrative that Nintendo games can't do as much as PC gaming.
Okay, you say these games look gorgeous, and in an artful style, they do. Breath of the Wild especially. Breath of the Wild is beautiful. But to say Breath of the Wild and Odyssey and fucking ARMS, they look better than the competition? First of all, define the competition. Don't just cherry pick the competition. I have no doubt that ARMS looks better than, I don't know, WWE 2K20. But does ARMS look better than, I don't know, Escape from Tarkov? Nobody's saying Nintendo games universally look bad. But we are saying that universally, Nintendo games tend to value gameplay over graphics, which is a respectable trait in itself. I mean, that's what led to the Wii being so graphically underpowered, but still so successful. And it's ultimately what leads to the Switch being graphically underpowered, but still successful. You need to choose a lane here. Do you want Nintendo to focus on fun games, or do you want Nintendo to be the winner of technology? Because one of those just isn't going to happen.
It was never true to begin with, right?
Yeah, no, it was true to begin with. The Wii didn't even launch with HD support. I literally don't want to hear it.
It's really weird seeing people try and pretend that, like, oh, Ocarina of Time, that wasn't as good as PC gaming. Like, no, it's just not true, right?
So we're going back to the late 90s. Great. This sounds like a really productive discussion.
At this point, I feel like right now the whole anti-Nintendo sentiment is really only present on message boards and among people who are desperately trying to sell you new consoles.
I am doing neither of those things. Thank you very much. And I'm not even anti-Nintendo. I'm just anti-dumb.
That's my take on it. It feels completely different than it did 20 years ago.
Were you alive 20 years ago? Like, genuinely, how old were you 20 years ago? You have one of those faces where you could either be, like, 18 or 31.
It really, really does. It feels like PlayStation has sort of lost a lot of their footing. They've lost a lot of their general appeal. It's only just a bunch of, really a bunch of nostalgia-blinded fanboys at this stage.
Oh, the painful irony.
It can't continue. It really, really can't.
Oh, but it will. Thanks to people like you.
The Outer Worlds, from what I understand, has all of the content from the Xbox and PC versions.
Yeah, that's not the issue. Content isn't the issue. The running of the content and the presenting of the content, that's the issue. I've been recording for 23 and a half minutes. What the hell am I doing with my life?
So there's really no pretending this version of the game is inferior to the others. And I wonder how long it's going to take for people to start refusing to support multiple gaming platforms.
Okay. That was a little weird. Where's this going? I don't like it.
Again, I've been advocating for this for a while now. I'm not sure. Like, when did I start? Like, the start of the Switch generation? We need to get rid of multiple gaming platforms. We need one gaming platform, the Nintendo one, and you don't need a gaming PC, you don't need Xbox or PlayStation, you only need Nintendo and third parties to support them.
Okay. I'm trying really, really hard to figure out where to even start on this one. I feel like you could just look through my entire channel and pick a video at random. And that could be a place to start. Who in the universe could actually think this is a good idea right now?
That's all you ever need.
Multiple platforms is such... And yeah, no, his video ended right there. Like, it's just a thing that he does. He just ends videos, like, mid-thought, which, honestly, I kind of respect. I wish I could do that. Instead, I ramble for a half hour. Multiple platforms are really, really important, because if you had only one platform deciding what you could and could not have, not only would that drastically decrease creativity, because you have a... Oh my god, that was really loud. Because you have a select few people deciding what can and cannot be on the platform. You have a select few people in complete control of an industry. There's a word for that. You might know the board game. It's named after the word for that. But that decreases competition. It means there's no innovation. There's no progression in tech. There's very little artistic integrity. One platform for an entire industry is a horrendous idea. I am so disappointed in you. I feel like a dad right now. How can you think this is a good idea? I'm not fully convinced your channel is not a troll. I've been hesitant to respond to more videos from you because I think this is the third one that I've done? Second or third? No, it's the third. I've definitely done 2. I think this is number 3. Number 3 or number 4. I don't remember. I don't keep up with these things. I make a lot of videos, okay? And they're really long. And every time I make one, a little piece of my brain goes away. Multiple platforms are extremely important for the gaming industry because it keeps things moving. It keeps people wanting to innovate and make better products. It keeps people wanting to be creative and draw people to one side. It leads to the creation of things like Xbox Game Pass or PS Now. Better hardware, better software, better services. And you have the PC gaming marketplace kind of pushing everybody along, being like, hey, look, we got this now. Oh, no, we got this now. We have this now. If you took away all these companies competing with each other to make the best possible product, the industry would just remain stagnant forever. And we would just get a whole bunch of Ubisoft sandboxes and yearly sports games and maybe a Call of Duty. Is that really the industry you want? Because that's what would happen if you had one company in charge. It would just be a whole bunch of garbage going for mass market appeal with no risks taken. I'm surprised you even said this, because I can't wrap my head around how anybody thinks this is a good idea. But you know what is a good idea? Following me on Twitter and Twitch and my music channel, where I actually have music up now. Links to all those places in the description. You can also donate to the channel if you really want to support me. It's not at all expected, but it's very, very much appreciated. And yeah, if you want to send me stuff to respond to, feel free to do that, because this one was sent to me too. And holy cow, this was a trip.